Hey, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video. If you noticed, we have finally finished our Speak Now series, so I mentioned a couple videos ago that I'm going to be looking for some different type of content to make while we're waiting for 1989's Taylor's version. One of my initial ideas was to watch the Miss Americana documentary, but a lot of it was kind of polarizing, saying that it felt like it should be waited until we get to the Lover album, so I figured for the time being I'd kind of ignore that just because I haven't even recorded the Speak Now tour yet, so I know I need to do that. That's going to be like the major thing that I'm going to do in between now and 1989, but for the time being I still wanted to make some videos for you guys. So some people recommended on my Google Doc and also on my Patreon just to look into Taylor Swift's more, not necessarily music related, but like moments in her career, and one of them was she won Woman of the Decade by Billboard in 2019, so there's like a 15 minutes acceptance speech that kind of like encapsulates, I guess, her career or something. One of the recommendations did say that it's a little polarizing, so I don't really know what that means, but let's just watch that video and kind of see what she has to say about it.
Right?
So I don't think this video even started with actually them announcing that she won it, so that's why it kind of feels like we're starting in the middle, but we're not.
This is sort of it's not a short speech, so just, I don't want this to slip and break because it's very important to me. Thank you so much. She's so supportive. We all need someone like that. I'm Taylor. Good evening. I want to first thank Billboard from the bottom of my heart for this honor for, whoa, this is going great so far. Excellent.
This is something about, maybe the polarizing is like the vibe. I don't know, because it felt very quiet in that room for a second.
Okay. I want to say thank you so much to Billboard for giving me this honor, for naming me as their Woman of the Decade.
That's such an amazing feat.
So what does it mean to be the woman of this decade? Well, it means I've seen a lot. When this decade began, I was 20 years old, and I had put out my self-titled debut album when I was 16, and then the album that would become my breakthrough album, which was called Fearless. And
actually, I don't know if, maybe I did know that, but I didn't know if that was like her breakthrough album. I thought she was like instant success.
I saw that there was a world of music and experience beyond country music that I was really curious about. I saw pop stations send my songs Love Story and You Belong With Me to #1 for the first time.
I remember that being on the radio all the time.
I saw that as a female in this industry, some people will always have slight reservations about you.
Okay.
Whether you deserve to be there, whether your male producer or co-writer is the reason for your success, or whether it was a savvy record label.
I feel like that is something that hopefully and maybe has changed in recent years, because I definitely believe that existed when she was doing this over a decade ago. I would like to believe that it might be a little bit better right now, just because there are newer female artists that doesn't feel like they get that sort of criticism. Like, someone that comes to my mind is like Olivia Rodrigo or like Sabrina Carpenter, and they were connected to men in the sense of like the drama that they had, which I guess you could call that publicity, but I don't know if anyone has been calling their art, you know, like crediting it to someone else. I feel like they are pretty self-made, but that also could be because people like Taylor Swift have kind of paved the way to take women artists like that, like writing their own music like seriously, which I know there was a lot of females before that wrote their own music, but I mean, I think she's one of a good mainstream inspiration for people.
I saw that people love to explain away a woman's success in the music industry. And I saw something in me change due to this realization. This was the decade when I became a mirror for my detractors. Whatever they decided.
Kind of sounds a little bit like Mirrorball, which this predates Mirrorball, right? Yeah, Folklore was 2020.
I couldn't do is exactly what I did. Oh, I'll take it. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe the audience just doesn't know when to clap because she's like trying to speak on something that's a little bit more serious.
Whatever they criticized about me became material for musical satires or inspirational anthems. And the best lyrical examples I can think of are songs like Mean, Shake It Off, and Blank Space.
Great songs.
Basically, if people had something to say about me, I usually said something back in their own way. And this reflex dictated more than just my lyrics.
So, not that I should have an opinion on her life, but I think that there is a line that got crossed on her sense, in my opinion. It's like, I think criticism is a good driving force for a lot of things, but this doesn't feel like it was criticism. It was trying to undermine someone's success. And I feel like that's what she's trying to say here. It's like, you know, someone can maybe give you criticism or feedback, and that is something that you can use in order to make better things. Like, you know, I don't think getting inspiration from things is a bad thing. Like, you know, like that did come and give her some of her biggest hits. And I'm not saying that those are the reasons why she got those hits, but I can definitely see criticism being different than trying to undermine success. So I definitely understand what she means by that.
Fearless did win Album of the Year at the Grammys, and I did become the youngest solo artist to ever win the award.
Wow.
With that win came criticism in Backlash in 2010 that I'd never experienced before as a young new artist. All of a sudden, people had doubts about my singing voice. Was it strong enough? Was I a little bit pitchy? All of a sudden, they weren't sure if I was the one writing the songs, because sometimes in the past I had co-written.
See, and that's the things that are awful. It's like, you love someone until they get to like, I don't know what the right word is, but like, when someone becomes too successful, like you supported them, then it becomes annoying. Like, to people, like they suddenly start hating someone when like I feel like I see that with the influencers. It's like there's an influencer before they're really famous, then they get that a lot of fan support, and then once they're actually doing the things that they can do now as an influencer, people start hating on them because they are using the opportunities that they got. And I wonder if that's something that she's kind of saying in the sense of like, and like she got boosted into a new audience from winning Album of the Year, and then some people started being like, she's too young. Like when you start seeing records being broken by legacy acts, I bet you could start thinking of like, did that person deserve it? Like people start having those conversations, which it's like I said, you tolerated, you thought it was good until it actually started like impacting something. I also feel like a random example of that is more recently, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Taylor Swift has been going to football games because of rumored Travis Kelce. As a casual-ish football fan, I can already see that being a thing where I kind of mentioned about the new audiences, and I've seen so many Facebook posts or people just saying like, oh my god, they need to stop like talking about Taylor Swift. And it's things that she's not even doing. Like, all she's just doing is, like, attending the game, and it's not her fault that the NFL is, like, weirdly obsessed with her. But just a random side note that it's, like, even when she's not purposely doing something, she's still getting introduces to audience that don't really have her best interests in mind all the time.
At that time, I couldn't understand why this wave of harsh criticism had hit me so hard. I believe a popular headline back then was a Swift backlash, which is clever. You gotta give it to him. And now I realize
kind of is.
This is just what happens to a woman in music if she achieves success or power beyond people's comfort level. I now have come to expect.
I think that's a little bit of what I just said. Like, it's good until people don't want to tolerate it.
That with good news comes some sort of pushback, but I didn't know that then. So then I decided that I would be the only songwriter on my third album, Speak Now, and that I would tour constantly. We just finished that. Work on my vocals every day and perfect my stamina in a live show.
Not that I ever wouldn't believe anything that she says, but I know that to be so true. Considering just getting off of Speak Now, I know that all of the songs are solely written, and also you guys have told me that there's so much better performances, and I've even noticed that listening to some live performances versus the tour of Speak Now tour, and just kind of seeing where she's going with the Eras tour, I can definitely tell that she did put a lot of effort in her vocals, because I've now heard a couple performances predating that So I definitely can see like where these things are kind of driving her. I know like one of the songs specifically was Mean, and that was all about how she couldn't sing.
I decided I would be what they said I couldn't be. I didn't know then that soon enough people would decide on something else I wasn't quite doing.
You're never going to be perfect, and that's for everybody.
People would keep going on and rolling along, and I would keep accommodating, overcorrecting in an effort to appease my critics.
And you're never going to appease them.
They're saying I'm dating too much in my 20s. Okay, I'll stop. I'll just be single for years. Now they're saying my album Red is filled with too many breakup songs. Okay, I'll make one about moving to New York and deciding that really my life is more fun with just my friends. Oh, they're saying my music is changing too much for me to stay in country music. All right. Okay, here's an entire genre shift and a pop album called 1989. You heard it?
Oh, something about that audience is weird. But one thing I'll give her is that she always feels authentic even if her motives aren't. And what I mean by that is like just what she said with like, you know, someone said that she wasn't writing her song, so she made a self-written album. Someone said that she's not doing country, so she's gonna make pop. And like she's just going based off of, you know, her critics, and that's what she just said. But something that's interesting was that is I feel like a lot of other artists that would maybe conform to their critics would start sounding inauthentic, like trying to just make things to appease people. And what I mean by that, I guess, is like, you know, when people follow on trends, like if a certain style of music becomes popular, you know that there's going to be certain artists that try to capitalize on that and start making music in that genre when that doesn't really fit them. And something about Taylor Swift is interesting is that even though it seems like she was making these albums with the motive of like proving people wrong or, you know, doing that, it always felt like authentic music. So I guess maybe when she came up with themes or things like that, she set her to-do list of the things that she set off to prove to herself, but still remain true to what the art that she wants to make. Because things like All Too Well or just really any song, it's like, you know, you made that album in spite of something else, but then it became a really authentic piece of work. So I think it's interesting that she has things that motivate her, but also know, like, I guess the word is artistic integrity. And if that makes any sense, I don't know.
Too many pictures of me with my friends. Okay, I can stop doing that too.
See, that's the thing, you're just gonna be like, sorry y'all, I'm gonna do what I want.
I'm actually a calculated manipulator rather than a smart businesswoman. Okay, I'll disappear.
Is that one referring to like the Kanye West thing? Or I don't know what that one's about.
You for years. Now I'm being cast as a villain to you.
Oh, no, that one
Okay, here's
is...
an album called Reputation.
Okay, that's the Kanye thing. I don't know what the businesswoman one was.
In the last 10 years, I have watched as women in this industry are criticized and measured up to each other and picked at for their bodies, their romantic lives, their fashion. Or have you ever heard someone say about a male artist, I really like his songs, but I don't know what it is. There's just something about him I don't like.
Now that's so true. It's incomparable of how the standards are different between men and women in music.
That criticism is reserved for us. But you know, I've learned that the difference between those who can continue to create in that climate usually comes down to this. Who lets that scrutiny break them and who just keeps making art.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like I said a little bit about like the artistic integrity where she still made art despite the scrutiny and she was proving that scrutiny wrong, but she was still making the art. And that's what keeps the passion, I would assume, too.
Lana Del Rey was ruthlessly criticized. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. We have similar tastes. I like it. She was ruthlessly criticized in her early career, and then slowly but surely she turned into, in my opinion, the most influential artist in pop. Her vocal stylings, her lyrics, her aesthetics, they've been echoed and repurposed in every corner of music. And this year, her incredible album is nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys because she just kept making art. And that I
haven't listened to all that much Lana Del Rey, but you can definitely tell that she is a type of person that has not let fame change her. And I 100% agree with what Taylor just said, because in the few songs that I've seen, I feel like even her new music, she's very down to earth. That is a very down to earth
Example
artist.
should inspire all of us that the only way forward is forward motion. That we shouldn't let obstacles like criticism slow down the creative forces that drive us. And I see that fire in the newer faces in our music industry, whose work I absolutely love. I see it in Lizzo, Rosalia, Taylor Parks, Haley Kiyoko, King Princess, Camila Cabello.
Not familiar with a lot of these people,
Megan
but
Thee Stallion, Princess Nokia, Nina Nesbitt, Sigrid, Normani, Her, Maggie Rogers, Becky G,
she knows
Dua
her
Lipa,
artists.
Ella May, Billie Eilish, and so many other amazing women who are making music right now. Female artists in music have dominated this decade in growth, streaming, record and ticket sales, and critical acclaim. So
and then you got the Eras Tour coming in a couple years.
why are we doing so well? Because we have to grow fast. We have to work this hard. We have to prove that we deserve this. And we have to top our last achievements. Women in music, on stage or behind the scenes, are not allowed to coast. We are held at a higher, sometimes impossible feeling standard. And it seems that my fellow female artists have taken
I wonder if that also has to do with how music is consumed nowadays. It's, I feel like people want to. It's because like what she just said is like women feel like they always have to top their last achievement, but it's also like I would assume like what she means by like sometimes it's impossible is just in general because they shouldn't be held to a different standard than anyone else, of course. But also, like I said, people consume media so much quicker now where, you know, something that might have been a couple years or months between things, now people want things within weeks. And if you spent so much time working on a body of work that was majorly successful, you don't want to follow that up right away. But if you don't, you have that fear of going into like irrelevancy because you have to constantly stay in the public eye in order to kind of keep, like I'm sure people will have always their, you know, their core fans, but I feel like if you look at most artists these days, they are making art at a much faster rate than like it has ever been made, in my opinion.
this challenge.
And not just Taylor Swift, I mean a lot of people.
It seems like the pressure that could have crushed us made us into diamonds instead. And what didn't kill us actually did make us stronger. But we need to keep advocating for women in the recording studios, behind the mixing board, in A&R meetings, because rather than fighting to be taken seriously in their fields, these women are still struggling to even have a chance to be in the room.
So true. I bet that's a whole different behemoth is behind the scenes because, you know, when you're the face of a brand, I'm not going to say you have a lot of power, but I feel like you have a little bit more control over than someone who might be producing or just being part of a back end of music, because I don't want to say that person's replaceable, but that's probably how they're treated in the sense, because if you have like a mainstream artist, you can't replace them. So you have to kind of work with that person, but someone that's more behind the scenes as a writer or a producer, I don't want to say they're one in a million, but that's probably how like they are treated in that sense, and that's awful. And I don't know, that's just my opinions.
We now find ourselves fully immersed in a vast frontier that wasn't around last decade, and that is the streaming world. In music, we're always walking hand in hand with technology, and sometimes that is so awesome. Like how now we're able to just drop a song that we made yesterday.
Yeah,
I've spoken
like
out in the past
so
about
fast to
picture
consume it
and
too.
revenue flow for creators and the songwriters and producers who are being left behind due to these rapid shifts and changes. I still don't think that record contracts or producers' agreements have fully caught up. And I hope that in the next decade, we can keep searching for the right solution for producers, songwriters, and creators. Don't you?
I feel like that's a fight that's also been happening right now with the writers and the actors. So maybe music's next. Like with the AI and like Netflix streaming, like streaming has changed the world.
There's been a new shift that has affected me personally, and that I feel is a potentially harmful force in our industry. And as your resident loud person, I feel the need to bring it up. And that is the unregulated world of private equity coming in and buying up our music as if it is real estate, as if it's an app or a shoe line. This just happened to me without my approval, consultation, or consent. After I was denied the chance to purchase my music outright, my entire catalog was sold to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holding.
See, with that whole situation, I'm learning a little bit more each time I go into things like this or albums. And what's crazy to me is that it wasn't even offered as an option to her. Because I don't think buying and selling music catalogs is necessarily a bad thing. Just because I've heard somewhere, and I don't know if maybe I've talked about this before, but like handling a music legacy is actually a really difficult task. So I saw not that long ago that some legacy acts that might have passed away, their families actually want to sell their catalogs because they don't want to deal with the upkeep of a musical legacy when you have such a mainstream artist. So I don't think necessarily that the option to sell your catalog should ever not be an option. And like I said, I'm not in the music space, this is just completely opinions, but I also saw the other day that like Justin Bieber and Katy Perry or something, they sold their music recently too, which seems like a kind of a weird move considering like you would maybe do that, like I said, at the end of your career. But I feel like if it's a deal that you're okay with and you're a part of that decision process, then there's no reason why you can't do it. Her situation, I feel like, is just so awful. It's because it's like she was like not even given the option, because if you know her, she would love to own that legacy, and that's where it's kind of just messed up.
Things in a deal that I'm told was funded by the Soros family, 23 Capital, and the Carlyle Group. Yet, to this...
Then again, I guess I didn't really think about the unequal power of these private equities that maybe she's talking about, because I was just started thinking, and if there was a scenario where, let's say, you do get a seat at the table to buy your own music, and if you're not Taylor Swift, who has all the money in the world, it might be kind of hard if you're trying to get into an, like, let's say you want to own your music and they say, okay, your music's worth 25 million. If you don't have 25 million and then some random investor does, I guess, you know, your musical legacy, you did get the option, but I don't know, that's where it gets sticky, I guess.
None of these investors have ever bothered to contact me or my team directly to perform their due diligence on their investment in me, to ask how I might feel about the new owner of my art, the music I wrote, the videos I created, photos of me, my handwriting, my album
I also
design.
feel like it's kind of awkward that she has to stand next to her for the 15 minutes. I feel like she should let Taylor just have the stage.
And of course, Scooter never contacted me or my team to discuss it prior to the sale.
This is the most I've actually heard her talk about Scooter in the situation.
I'm fairly certain he knew exactly how I would feel about it, though. And let me just say that the definition of the toxic male privilege in our industry is people saying, but he's always been nice to me, when I'm raising valid concerns about artists and their rights to own their music.
Valid.
Of course he's nice to you. If you're in this room, you have something he needs. The fact is that private equity is what enabled this man to think, according to his own social media post, that he could buy me. But I'm
Is that what he said? He said that he bought her?
obviously not going willingly.
Like she just said, that's an awful investment if you didn't do your due diligence to know that Taylor Swift would obviously not.
Yet the most amazing thing was to discover that it would be the women in our industry who would have my back and show me the most vocal support at one of the most difficult times. And I will never, ever forget it. Like, ever. But to conclude, I will say that in 10 years I've seen forward steps in our industry, in our awareness, our inclusion, our ability to start calling out unfairness and misconduct. I've seen the advent of social media, the way it can boost the breakthrough of emerging artists.
Does Taylor Swift just need to make her own like record label for all of the artists that she wants to support, knowing how icky the music industry could be?
And I've seen fans become more engaged and supportive than ever before. I've leaned on that support and it has kept me in a place where, no matter what, I always wanted to keep making music for them. I was up on a stage in New York City in 2014, accepting Billboard Woman of the Year, and I was talking about...
That's cool that she got, like, Women of the Year in the same decade that she ends up getting Women of the Decade.
The future of streaming. How we needed to make sure that the female artists, writers, and producers of the next generation were protected and compensated fairly. This was before my record deal with Universal last year that would contractually guarantee that the artists on their roster be paid upon any sale of their Spotify shares, unrecoupable. So thank you for that.
I don't know exactly what that means, but her record deal had a deal for other people? That's cool. I guess it means like if they would have to be notified if their music's being sold and they would get a portion of it?
This speech I'm referring to was on my 25th birthday. I'm about to turn 30 tonight. But my exact quote during this speech was, I really just feel like we need to continue to try to offer something to a younger generation of musicians. Because somewhere right now, your future Woman of the Year is probably sitting in a piano lesson or in a girls' choir. And today, right now, we need to take care of her. I've since learned that at that exact moment, an 11-year-old girl in California really was taking piano lessons and really was in a girls' choir. And this year, she has been named Woman of the Year at the age of 17. Her name is Billie.
Wow. That's some foreshadowing. That is the ultimate Easter egg that she didn't even know about.
And those are the stories we need to think about every day as we do our jobs within this industry. The ones where people's dreams come true and they get to create music and play it for people. The ones where fans feel a connection to music that makes their day easier, makes their night more fun, makes their love feel more sacred, or their heartache feel less isolating. The ones where all of you in this room stand as an example for someone else in the next generation who loves the same thing that we love. Music. And no matter what else enters the conversation, we will always bring it back to music. And as for me, lately I've been focusing
That's like the perfect summary, I feel like.
less on doing what they say I can't do, and more on doing whatever the hell I want.
No, that's the perfect summary.
Thank you for a magnificent, happy, free, confused, sometimes lonely, but mostly golden decade. I'm honored to be here tonight. I feel very lucky to be with you. Thank you so much.
How awesome. I didn't find that as polarizing. Maybe you guys can let me know what's the polarizing part of this. I feel like she was just speaking to her experiences. The one thing I did think was the most, not the most relevant, but a very relevant part was just how women do reinvent and like become different much more in this industry than men. And this isn't necessarily a knock towards men, I guess, but you know, something like the Eras Tour to me, now that I'm thinking about it, is like a highlight reel of like her career and how many times she really has reinvented herself. She's reinvented herself kind of like 10 times with those albums. And then like, there's an artist that I actually wanted to see pretty recently, and it was Ed Sheeran. And he might not be the greatest example of that, but he's kind of doing something called the Mathematics Tour. And it's kind of a compilations of all of his albums recently. And if you look at some of the videos, he's a great performer. He's like almost a one-man band, which is really cool in its own right. But there's no difference between the albums that you could like really focus on and say that's a different era. And I guess that goes to show like, you know, he's had mainstream success for the last decade by doing nothing more but making the same genre, same music, same everything, and I enjoy it. Like I said, I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but I can definitely see how like if Taylor Swift never would have maybe transitioned into pop or done something completely different than, I don't know, Speak Now, would her music be as popular? I would like to think yes, because I feel like Taylor Swift is that kind of artist that will find success in whatever she does, but I get it. I get like, you know, she might have not been tolerated as long or as successful if she would have been able to stay in one box like men are able to in a way. So I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on it overall. I definitely don't find this as polarizing as what it was kind of led on to me. But again, you guys can let me know if I'm missing something here. But let me know your thoughts, and thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you back, hopefully, when we get to the Speak Now tour.